So we're talking today about building an e-commerce giant. Well, I would argue that there is no e-commerce, it's just commerce. The lines between offline and online retail are becoming more and more blurry every day. In fact, Amazon just opened its first brick-and-mortar bookstore this week. And brands like Kate Spade have created clickable windows for their shop front, so it's becoming more and more blurry. And our two panelists today are going to talk about their experiences building massive retail businesses that just happen to use the web. And we're going to try and talk about some of the opportunities and challenges that remain in this space. So I want them to introduce themselves. Do you want to start here, Robert?
Yeah, so I'm Robert. I'm co-founder and co-CEO of Zalando. So it's the biggest European fashion platform. So we started a company 7 years ago, and we last year went public. So and it's like we have about 16 million active customers, and last year we did about 2.2 billion revenues. So quite a massive company. So we're active in 15 European markets.
Okay.
And we're based in Berlin.
Great, thank you. And Michelle.
And hi, I'm Michelle Peluso from Gentz. Gentz is the largest digital player in fashion in the US. And every day we try to make our more than 9 million members excited to come and buy fashion.
Great. So I was wondering if you could start by giving us a little story about your company, but by telling us what your personal kind of highlights and lowlights have been in the building of your business. Shall we start with Michelle?
Sure. So Gentz was started in 2007, and I joined the board shortly thereafter. So I remember the early days and the rush of, everyone sitting at their computer at noon to try to see how much a sale would do. And breaking brands was so challenging because it was such a new concept for the United States. Gentz grew very rapidly and scaled, and I think launched a bunch of different verticals, and that was something where we overextended. I think we got into too many verticals and pulled back a bit and have narrowed the focus really back on making sure we're awesome in fashion every single day. But as always, when you put on a show every single day at noon, it's this amazing collaboration between merchants and innovators and technology, and bringing it all together so the customer has a great experience at noon.
Great. What about Zalando?
Yeah, so our story was, we started as two-person back in 2008, so in the middle of the financial crisis. So we had like a tough start at that time, and then just scaled like in a very small office back at that time, and then I think back in 2009, end of 2009, we got the first bigger financing round, which was like 20 million, and based on that we really could start scaling the company, so selling shoes online in Germany. So and there was I think that there was 2010 was really like my first highlight that I had, where we scaled from 2 million demand that we did in February, and then in March, in May we did already 30 million, and then in October 70 million. So it was a very, very tough time that we had to cope with. So this was I think one of my personal highlights that once we've done that, and once we succeeded there. I think the second big highlight on the course of the company was when we internationalized and we've set up our own warehouses, and we had no idea of how to set up a warehouse on our own. And then we had the first warehouse was running then, and was this massive 20 soccer field kind of warehouse, and then and it was working. So this was the second big highlight. And then obviously the third big highlight was last year after the IPO. So it was one of the biggest European tech IPOs for a long time, and we came back to our team and were celebrating this day. It was great, yeah.
Great. Yeah, so both of you have talked about kind of being a small company and then having this, meteoric rise, and that comes with its challenges. I think you've seen that, Michelle, where you had a period of flattening of growth. So can you both talk a little bit about how, you sustain very rapid early growth as a small company, and how you kind of learn to scale up?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things, and I think Robert and Zalando have done a tremendous job, and I think both of us sort of think about and face the same thing, which is how do you grow consumer demand? Obviously, you have to have awesome product at a great value and do something unique for the customer. And at the same time, how do you make sure that you're a profitable company, and what's that right trade-off and balancing act between investing for growth and being profit and generating positive cash flow? And I think those are some of the things we spend a lot of time thinking about at Gentz, how to get that balance right. and how to get that mix right. When you start out, every dollar of revenue is exciting, and then you have to start thinking about, well, what are all, when you're at hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars of revenue, what are all the consequences and impacts of certain categories you're in for the customer experience, for the cost structure? And so I think where we are at our stage is really working through the balance of growth, which comes from great product at a great value with an innovative experience. Those are the three pillars that are critical for us, so that the customer is excited. And then at the same time, making sure that we're sort of a profitable cash-generating company as well.
And you said for you it's about focusing in on fashion as
absolutely focusing on fashion, and we launched travel, we launched taste, we launched men's full price initially, and while they had some great characteristics and showed some signs of promise, the reality was with a relatively small team, we're still a very, very small part of the overall off-price retail trade. Our market share is very small, and so we just needed to stay doubled down and focused on fashion. You can imagine if you have a search marketing team or a digital marketing team that's trying to do the best they can with fashion keywords, but also trying to buy food keywords and travel keywords, it can be very distracting. And so for us at least, the right decision, we have very strong loyalty of our customers, and the right decision is to continue to deliver a really exceptional fashion experience every day at noon. We've been investing much more heavily in editorial and storytelling and international growth. Those things are really complement the core of fashion, whereas I think things like travel and food and some other stuff a little bit competed with the core.
Yeah, you mentioned international growth, so I wanted to talk to you about that. So you're obviously a very European company, and you've scaled to many new geographies all within Europe. What's that been like? Because even, Europe isn't one country. Every market has very specific ways, especially the way it looks at fashion. So what would you say has been your experience going into new markets in Europe?
Yeah, so
the challenges?
I think for a long time we've only stayed in Germany. So until the end of 2010, we only stayed in Germany, saying shoes and then fashion in Germany. The first time we were very reluctant to go international because we were afraid of the complexities with internationalization. Yeah? So and we thought always like Germany is a big enough market. So then why should we go too much outside? And then we launched our first market in end of 2010. Then it was Netherlands, and then we realized actually, okay, it's actually not only a German game; it's a European game, and you have lots of synergies that you can take when you do it right. And then, and then we pretty much in 2011 and 12, then we launched in total in 15 European markets. So our summary about internationalization is. So we believe a lot in localization. So we invest a lot into localization. So having the local customer experience, the local fashion experience, the local delivery methods, the local payment methods.
Could you give an example of something that was only launched for one specific market? Can you think of any?
Yeah, lots of them. So it's kind of amazing how people actually pay. Like Germans pay per invoice, they love paying per invoice. Italians love paying per cash on delivery. Yeah. So and I think even French people they still love to pay per check. Yeah. So these are the very local payment methods that you introduce.
Right.
And then local advertising. So in terms of doing advertising, it's as well highly local. So Dutch people don't like when you scream, yeah, and our advertising was about screaming, so we had to adapt that. In the Nordics, it's not about a postman, so our advertising was about postman in Germany, so we had to skip the postman. So there are lots of these examples where we had to adapt to the local markets.
Okay.
And then on the other hand, we can actually drive lots of synergies across these markets when we buy merchandise, when we do. When we set up the logistics infrastructure for these markets, and as well in terms of data and in terms of technology. So this is where we drive the efficiencies on a global scale.
And Michelle, I read that Guild was interested in also looking at even further afield, maybe Asia. So can you tell us a little bit about how you're preparing to roll out across, really different fashion markets from the US?
And I think Robert brings up some important points. When we think about a few things, first of all, there are priority markets for us, core priority markets. We use border-free to ship, but there are some markets where we've invested directly, like China with Alipay and direct shipping. You have to think about local merchandise. While that is a small percentage of what we do locally, we're increasing that as we think about core markets like China, Korea, Australia, Canada, Russia, Middle East, some big areas for us. Secondly, we think about the local distribution and fulfillment experience. Local forms of payment are critical, localizing key content and language and editorial and visual imagery. And clearly in some places there's local forms of payment. And so the other big thing is marketing support and how we think about driving. And that starts with our email. For us to send an email out at noon from New York, not that particularly helpful around the world. And so localizing our communication methods with customers, and of course some of the local digital marketing support. But it's a long, long road, and I think being very focused and prioritized on which countries are important to us, and then what the entry model is. So for us in China, it's very critical to have the right partnerships, and we've invested a lot over the years in knowing the right players in China and thinking about the right partnerships. We would never think of going it completely alone in China, for instance.
When do you plan to launch in Asian markets?
So we have today, Gilt can be bought in any market, and especially in Asia, in priority countries, Australia, Korea, China, Hong Kong, and Japan. It is a more localized experience. And so that exists today, and then we have some partnerships in China as well.
Okay. I'm interested, being a technology journalist, in how technology plays into all of this. So obviously a lot of retail is about the customer experience and getting people to like your product, but how important is technology? So whether that means like algorithms that are doing recommendations, or whether that means, you've just opened up a data center that here in Ireland that's, using data in an interesting way. Can you both tell me from kind of your experience what role tech plays?
Yeah. I mean, it's critical, and it's a great place to be talking about technology. We have a brilliant engineering team here in Dublin, and we've been here since really the very beginning of Gilt. Very early on, we've built up an engineering core here. They run front office and some of the personalization work we do, and architecture and the like. And equally, we have an incredibly talented team in New York. I think technology is fascinating and important, obviously for commerce in a digital environment for a variety of reasons. We don't have the physical store, so the user experience is that innovation that we can bring from a technology perspective to the customer. When we launch things like Shop the Look, or take a picture of this and show me other things like it, or this color and show me everything you have there, when we are able to do personalization and flag, we think you're going to like this brand because others like you like it. We think you should buy this brand because you've waitlisted it before. We think you're going to be interested in something because it's your size. That's leveraging, obviously, technology and all the data. As a member site, it's effectively like we know what everybody's trying on every single day. And so putting that and making the customer experience better because of that is critical. It's fundamentally important from a digital marketing perspective. We rely heavily on technology to make sure that we're reaching the right audience, that as soon as we bring them in as members, we're giving them the best possible activation experience, and that is tech-dependent, clearly, engineering-dependent. But it's also really critical to our back-end process, the way we work with our brands, the way we fulfill, the way we distribute. The more streamlined we can get, the more use of APIs we can make between us and some of our brand partners, international partners, et cetera. The cost structure of Gilt becomes a lot leaner as well. And so, sort of top to bottom, every stack of our technology environment ends up playing a fundamental role in transforming the consumer experience and the P&L of Gilt.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. So for us, it's as well very critical. So technology, especially the data piece, and we believe as well it's getting more and more important in the future. So we actually see that the retail space, especially in fashion, is becoming like a lot more a technology game in the future now, especially with mobile and with the emergence of the digitalization that you see in fashion brands. You see like actually everything mingling, like the offline world with the online world, and the fashion influencers, and so everything is mingling, everything gets connected, so it gets more and more a technology game. However, what we as well believe in, it's fashion will always be something where what we call like art and science. You cannot only do fashion with only based on data, because there's always a human emotional touch to it. So data cannot predict like every single trend, and data cannot really, a machine cannot really recommend you like to 100% degree this is like the style that fits to you. So this is what we believe in. So art and science.
Yeah.
However, data is gaining more and more importance over time. We just recently opened up here a Fashion Insight Center here in Dublin, where we employ like a great team of data engineers already, which we are scaling now. They are working exactly on those kind of problems out there. So what kind of data can you collect in terms of on the merchandise in order to better recommend styles to consumers?
And I think to Robert's point, I think it is a marriage of right brain and left brain. And what's really fascinating is you need people on both sides that appreciate that, because you need to be a learning environment and a learning culture. So our engineers can provide our merchants with better tools to help them predict what to buy, how much to buy, what to margin it, how fast the velocity of sales, what the best calendar optimization looks like. But ultimately, it's up to them, what they understand about their brand partners, trends, et cetera, to put together the show every day. And so it's not like you have an engineering team here doing their work and a merchandising team here and a buying team here doing their work. What makes it exciting and fun is when those teams are highly collaborative and when they can appreciate the other side, looking at the night sky from the other side of the world.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of the human experience, there's still, offline is still thriving, right? Like what we call offline, like shops. You go in, nothing yet beats that experience of picking out what you like.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering what you think online could do better and to kind of get some bits from that experience of going into a real shop, and whether you guys are thinking about that since you don't have offline stores.
So our idea about offline. So we appreciate that there's lots of offline sites out there. So I think our job is more that we actually combine those two, like offline experience and online experience. So both have advantages, both has disadvantages.
Yeah.
And I think the future is more about connecting these worlds. Yeah? So it's not about like it was like probably 5 years ago when you're ordering something online, then you're actually online, and when you're in a store, then you're offline. So actually, in the terms of mobile, consumers don't care. Yeah? So if you're online, offline. So it is what us. It's our job to actually combine these experiences in a way. Yeah? So we ask ourselves, what kind of role can we play in the offline world? How can we help offline players to be successful as well with with demand that comes from online world? So this is pretty much like our future that we think a lot more as the platform that actually combines everything.
And mobile, is that coming into the picture now as well, helping to translate from computers onto phones?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're just at the beginning stages here. I mean, online penetration is still so low, and so I think we're at the beginning stages. And if we keep in mind, what does she want? What does the consumer want? These platforms, whether it's an offline experience, a web experience, a mobile experience, they should be additive. And if we continually push ourselves to think from the perspective of what she wants, when she's in a store, she might want to try new brands or some sizing or some special occasions. When she's on her mobile device, she wants something quick and fast and easy. When she's on her iPad at 9 at night, she wants to read about fashion and trends. If we can make these experiences additive for her, we'll always follow the right path. And I totally agree. You can't sit here and say one's good and one's bad. She is a multidimensional customer, and we need to be multidimensional to meet her needs.
Great. So we're nearly out of time, but I just had a final question about, since we've talked about scaling from startup to becoming large companies, IPO is an important part in that journey. Now, Gilt has been for a long time on that path, but hasn't got there yet. I wonder if you could talk about one of the big challenges very quickly, and then we'll come to Robert as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think the challenges are always, that it's what I talked about. When we got into too many categories, we lost a little bit of sight of the Gilt purpose in the world, and keeping our focus back on fashion and on her is critical for us.
Okay, and you've gone on to the other side. You just IPO'd. What advice, looking back, would you have for others who are going to IPO, or smaller companies, about what they should expect when they get to that side, how things change? One piece of advice.
So I think like one of the biggest challenges, I guess, as well for us is like when you scale so much and as well turn a company into public company, is how can you actually keep your entrepreneurial culture like really ingrained in the company. So therefore, I would strongly recommend everybody that thinks about IPO, like do it like when you're really ready for it, because I think you have to prepare as well the culture for keeping entrepreneurial within every single employee that you have, and as well that such an event as an IPO doesn't change that. I think we've done a quite great job in keeping the culture still like very, very entrepreneurial at its heart. But I think this was a very, very tough challenge to manage that.
Great. So in conclusion, stay true to yourself and you'll scale up. Well, thank you guys so much for being
Thank
here
you.
today.
Thank you.
And thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.